Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you around the world. I am Subrato Majumdar. I lead digital business for Indegene. I have with me a very esteemed and honored panel to talk to you about business transformation. What is amazing is all these panelists are veterans who have led business transformation in their entire career. A fantastic keynote today from Tarun Mathur of Human in the Loop. We are absolutely in the extreme position of disruption, technology disruption, and innovation obviously is on steroids. But the fundamental business questions still remain the same. How do you cut down clinical development time? How do you engage with the physicians better? How do you really provide wellness at the point of care in a much more sophisticated fashion? But all this, how do we deliver at scale across the enterprise, across the globe, across over 200 countries? I have the privilege and honor to introduce each one of my panelists who actually spread across the entire value chain from clinical to commercial to digital health to digital enterprise. What is interesting is I've had the pleasure of working with many of you, the panelists, and I've also admired to see the vision come to reality in a very real fashion. Let me first introduce our digital clinical guru, Dr. Andreas Koester. Dr. Koester is a trained physician. He has been passionate about patients. And since 2012, since I know him, I have seen him challenge the status quo, challenge the current state of affairs as he established the Clinical Innovation Center for Johnson & Johnson. And since then, the kind of solutions which were delivered absolutely were quite disruptive at that point in time, and the industry recognized with highlighting these solutions in the Pharma Voice Top 100 Awards and the Medicine Maker Top 100 Awards. Welcome, Dr. Koester.
Thank you, Subrato.
Leading digital commercial is Giuseppe Firenze. Over 21 years at Lilly, Giuseppe has evolved and seen how commercial models and business models have got disrupted. His passion for physicians, hospitals, caregivers is unparalleled. With the global experience working with the Central Marketing Organization and the Commercial Excellence Organization of Lilly, we have Giuseppe leading the next generation customer transformation for Lilly. Welcome, Giuseppe.
Thank you, Subrato.
I have had the pleasure of knowing Vishu for a long time, have been part of his digital transformation initiatives in supply chain, manufacturing, quality, and field service at J&J. And Vishu today is the CIO of Abbott Diabetes. Abbott has been in the news, is going to be touching each of our lives. Before we board a plane in 15 minutes, you might know if anybody has COVID or not. It's truly transformational in every which way. Today, Vishu is managing lifestyle diseases for a mass set of consumers or customers, because this is a medical device and consumer kind of device with Abbott diabetes products and solutions. Vishu truly is embodying the consumerization of healthcare. And welcome, Vishu.
Thank you for having me today, Subrata.
And bringing it all together across R&D and commercial, and really bringing digital enterprise at scale, is my pleasure to introduce Joyce Lee, the CIO of Janssen Pharmaceuticals, the largest of the entire mix of revenues for J&J. Joyce is the global group CIO, just to correct, and is a strategic member of the J&J Janssen Group Operating Committee. and a strategic member of the Johnson & Johnson technology leadership team. Her primary goal is to transform the strategy for R&D and commercial, and she is continuing to transform make business transformation with her experience from the consumer sector when she was the managing director of Singapore and Malaysia. And she brings a wealth of experience from the business side as well.
Hey, thank you. Yep. Thank you for having me. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Such a pleasure. So each one of you, from patients to consumer to the enterprise to the physicians, give us a flavor for what the changing demands of the consumer is. And if you can, consumer or customer, if you can give us a feel for what this customer ecosystem looks like. Maybe I'll start with Dr. Koester.
Sure. I think there are a number of trends there we have been observing for several years, and one of the trends is the empowered patient, as I would call it, the patient that Googles about the disease, that is knowledgeable and doesn't look up to the doctor anymore as the god in a white coat. So that led to a development that has been called participatory medicine. And it's very hard for us, especially for old doctors like myself, who have grown up in a more patriarchal approach practicing medicine, to change that. And I see a lot of colleagues paying maybe lip service to this participatory medicine, but to take the time during daily practice to put this in the action is hard. And I think taking it back to us in the industry, it is hard for us to guide the patient towards the right sources of information. There is a lot of information out there, but there's also a lot of misinformation out there. So I think the challenge for us is, how do we empower the patient to access the right information, whether it's about our products, whether it's about clinical trials, whether it's about general health related information. And maybe I can give that as a challenge to my colleagues in the IT field. How do we use this plethora of data we get now from digital devices, the continuous stream of data, and how do we translate that into something that provides actionable health information, both for the physicians and the patients? I think that's the challenge ahead.
Thank you. Vishu?
Yes, good morning.
So in your world of digital health and the consumerization of healthcare, so how is the customer demands and the consumer demands changing, especially with the participatory medicines? There's a fascinating term used, and with so much empowerment from the internet, so how is the consumerization of healthcare happening? Where is the demands from your consumers coming along?
Yeah, if I could just share a little bit of background about our product. Many of you know that diabetes is a pretty impactful disease. It's there globally. So if you think about where diabetes was in the past, people used to measure their blood glucose in a very complicated way, where you have to basically insert a lancet into your finger, get the blood, put it on a strip, then put it on a meter. So if you think about it, it was more of an inconvenience rather than keeping your life to the fullest or living your life to the fullest. So the advent of how you measure glucose came into what we call as continuous glucose monitoring, and companies such as Abbott, and a couple of others came up with this concept of, why can't we use a wearable device? I mean, obviously Apple Watch is synonymous to wearable, Fitbit, whatnot, What Abbott has done is revolutionized with our Abbott diabetes sensor, which basically you put it in your upper arm, and here you go, a sensor that can actually measure your blood glucose in real time and send it to your phone or a reader, depending upon what's your choice of getting the information. So what this does is it creates a convenience, whether you're a type 1 or a type 2, depending upon where the product has been approved by the FDA, for people to pretty much see their blood glucose. Now, what this does is, helps people to live life normal. What I mean by that is, based upon your blood glucose readings, you can adjust your food intake. You can adjust your, your exercise activities, or even doing your normal things. So coming back to consumerization of such a device, our sensor is already being used by almost 2 million patients, or diabetes patients rather, because now they see that convenience and living life normally. So whether there's a pandemic or not, the demand for our product is always there. But what we've seen with the COVID situation is people basically having the opportunity to actually try out this continuous glucose monitoring, people having meaningful discussions with their healthcare providers or endocrinologists to say, look, why can't I not get into a continuous glucose monitoring? And so what we are seeing is more of a demand of our product rather than, with what's going on with the pandemic. So if you think about that, even with, other, including the Apple Watches, oxygen measurement and whatnot, now all of a sudden you're seeing consumers getting smarter and smarter with regards to some of the capabilities that they're provided. So if you talk about teledoc, now you're talking about people having sensors to measure their blood glucose readings. So we think this is a good trend towards where it's going, and I think the amount of breakthroughs that's coming in this field is just enormous. And I feel like we are only in the tip of the iceberg as far as where we are going with continuous glucose monitoring. And, with the products that we are providing to these consumers, it's basically giving an advantage to the consumers rather than the other way. And they are able to take certain decisions based upon, these wearable devices that's provided. That's the big change that we are seeing with it. And now adding digital transformation to it, it's going to a phone. I mean, tell me how many people don't have a phone today. So having a phone and able to see your blood glucose measurements, and Reyes touched upon, the concept of actionable insights. So now what's happening is with these readings, people are able to do actionable insights and make certain decisions in a much more intelligent manner. So those are some of the things we are seeing from a consumerization of a health device perspective.
That's awesome. So the pressure is on the physician and the hospital systems to really up the game. From Giuseppe, in your world of serving the physicians, what are the demands from their side with the participatory medicines and the empowerment with sensors, and the consumers have all the data with them, and possibly at times a bit more knowledge than the physicians themselves? How are you viewing your world?
Yeah, and thank you, Andreas and Vishu, for your perspective. I think I'm working and focusing my time and my passion around what is the best way to engage one of our primary customer, which is the physician. And I think if you look at from commercial point of view, historically, of course, our main channel has been the sales force, but all of that, because of the digital transformation, has changed. And the challenge I've been, personally speaking, I think we need to embrace change much faster, especially in the pharma industry. And we've been living in this model that I call it push-pull, right? Where we've been providing services through mainly the sales force or the medical affairs organization, and now the digital transformation. And I would say the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated far much more the digital channel. So one of the challenges is to understand, first of all, is what truly engages a doctor, what are the real needs. I think we've been always been very centric from pharma industry to think about in our terms, what is the most important information to share in our terms. We need to shift the paradigm and start to understand what is the key needs and information that is more important in ACP terms, and how we can serve that, first of all, in an experience that is not disjointed, but is coherent across channels. So I've been sometimes joking with my colleagues. I've been a few years in marketing as well. And, we have a few years ago, the term of multi-channel marketing, right? When you talk about experiences, there was kind of having good discussion and an interesting discussion. I say, well, we do not yet multi-channel engagement. In reality, we do what I call multi-silo engagement. We do know that we believe each channel is unique. The problem is, as an ACP, you live an experience across channels. So what are the channels truly we need to focus on? What are the channels that are more trusted? For our ACP, to me, the secret sauce would be where our customer they prefer and where to be in and where they want to be engaged. You know, I just read a few days ago a secondary market research data that was conducted in Europe. I think it was done by a company based in Switzerland. And it was interesting because in the European community, many of the doctors, they were saying that they were receiving most visit from the sales force, but that was not their preferred channel any longer. They started to have far much more preference or either more on digital channel. And the other one is what is the right channel, but most importantly, what is the right content? And I think we have a huge opportunity to improve both. So the COVID-19, I think, has created a lot of opportunity to accelerate some investment that some areas we were always like putting as a second tier. The pandemic has forced to change the way on how we interact. I can talk a little bit later on some strategies or what are the crucial capabilities. But I think the personalization of the content and understanding what is the right content. Is it promotional? On reality, there is more interest on clinical data, or is there an opportunity to serve our ACPs with patient support information? Do they need, I don't know, leave behind? And how we can change the game now that we are fully digital, especially in the next 8 to 10 months from now. And last but not least, I do believe all of this pandemic is going to create new opportunities because it's going to shape new behaviors. I always say to my friends, this little thing has changed a lot of behaviors and a lot of expectation in our lives. I'm not talking about apps, just that's this one. I think we will live in a new norm. We will transform the way we engage with our customer. And I think they will be the first one on triggering new models. So we need to look out for those and partner to understand how to do that better.
Thank you, Giuseppe. So Joyce, you had told me run up to this session, business transformation is digital transformation. Digital transformation is synonymous to business transformation. And in our first keynote, I think it was Brian Campbell or Sebastian Good said, transformation means there's a beginning and an end. And in true terms, this is an evolving and emerging transformation which is going to be on forever, right? Sorry, my lights went off with nobody in the office. Sorry about that. So Joyce, what you are leading enterprise transformation at scale at the size of Johnson & Johnson. Help us understand how you're going about it.
Yep. Hey, thank you. Thank you so much. And that's a very good question. And I always think about connecting the digital transformation with the business, because I always tell my team, there's no such thing as an IT project. It's actually a business transformation that enables technology. And I think, it's a good challenge, Andreas gave, right? Like one of the things we really need to do is digital at scale, right? Because I think a lot of the companies right now have a lot of test and learn. And even in Janssen and J&J, we are now addressing the question, how do we scale? And how do we make sure that we move from solutions to platforms and ecosystems? And if you hear all the, external environment, right, being able to connect through the different ecosystems, integrate is going to be the key to scale and drive both digital and business transformation. And I think the other way is strategic partnerships. So I think there's an acknowledgement that, no person is no longer an island. You can't even at the scale of J&J, we are not able to do so alone. And you've seen that, right? I mean, you've seen it right now in many, many situations where there's strategic partnerships to bring both the data, the digital capability, and also the business models and the know-hows together so that we can scale. I think the other thing I want to make a point is the business and IT lines are blurring a little bit. Like, let me give an example of data science, right? So I've always got asked the question, well, you know, scale, is the data science in technology, in business, in commercial, in R&D? My answer is it has to be everywhere. We have to start to democratize, you know, all these capabilities and start to build muscles for enterprise. And that means being bilingual and even trilingual. And that means it is okay for business people to be in business, to go into technology to do business. And we have to stop to focus less on roles and titles, but more on jobs to be done and form teams of teams and cross-pollinate. And I think that will be the way to scale both the business and digital transformation. And the business has an equally important role to get invested in the digital transformation. You know, Andreas gave us a good challenge. Data, it's not technology alone. It's data ownership, data governance, the type of data, the quality of data. So a lot of work has to be done. And all the points that we talk about, the transforming a landscape of patients and HCPs, you know, we will have to really turn this around and do it very differently.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very interesting thoughts. So, Andreas, since you led some of this clinical innovation from 2012, one of the a fixture in this industry is regulatory. Mm-hmm. So, how did you really affect, and what are your messages to bring the agility of innovation to bear while ensuring regulatory compliance is not posing to be a constraint?
Okay, I will take the liberty here to do it just like our presidential candidates, not answering your question, but say something that's burning on my tongue related to what Joyce said. And I think you hit on an extremely important point that was also emphasized by Daniel Kraft during his keynote. It is not single point innovative solutions that will make the difference. It's the integration of these solutions, and I think this is where the challenge for all of us lies. Back to your question, Subrato, I think the regulators here and the regulatory compliance is something that is a very dominant theme in internal discussions. But when you actually talk to the regulators, when you talk to the FDA or to the EMA, the regulators are not the obstacle. They are not the issue. They are looking to us. They said, don't wait for us to come up with regulations. You have to forge forward. You have to come up with solutions, and we will accompany you along the way. And if the solution is sensible and if the integrity of the data can be demonstrated, then we are all for it. So I think as a takeaway maybe for all of us is to think less as the regulators, as the ones to be afraid of, but rather as friends who want to work with us, and friends that shouldn't be used to say, yeah, but if we do this, maybe the regulators won't like it. It's rather, no, if it is sensical and if it is forward-looking and if it is good for patients and physicians, they will like it. If you allow me to add one more thought on the, because no panel these days is complete without talking about COVID. I think the acceleration Giuseppe hit on COVID provided us with is a real unique opportunity to accelerate what we do in the business. Think about when we created solutions just a year ago, there was always the question, will the patients adopt it? Will they have access to the internet? Will they know how to use their phone? That dramatically changed in March. I suddenly got a flood of emails from my bank, from my healthcare providers. Did you know that you don't have to call us, or that you don't have to call in, but that you can do it on the internet? That told me, okay, not everybody is like us doing it on the internet already. For 10 years, a lot of people still relied on phone banking and on phone interaction. These days are over. People have been forced to shift their behavior to the internet. Look at the uptake of Amazon. In Italy, which has some of the oldest populations in Europe, Amazon usage was 40% before the pandemic. People just didn't like it. Germany, 80%, UK, 89%, Italy, 40%. Now, every Italian has used Amazon. So the epidemic has been a great equalizer. And one could say the digital Rubicon has suddenly been crossed in the past 6 months. So every time I think about it is, what impact did that have on the budget of IT and of integration? I think every company that is worth their mettle and wants to be a leader in the field, they should have all doubled their IT budget and their investment within the past 6 months. So again, back to my colleagues, has your budget been doubled? Has your headcount been doubled? Because everything that happens out there in terms of uptake has been doubled. So how are we keeping pace?
Yep.
And I'll take the big elephant in the room is how are you justifying the investments to scale? The test and learns are, to your point, how are you really justifying? What's the approach you're taking to bring the return on value for Joyce? Mm-hmm.
Hey, and great point. And I really love what you said, and I know I agree with Andreas. We may not follow the script per se, but I have a real good example of scale, and like what Andreas is saying, right? Like you think that you have, before COVID, you think you may have hit some level of a threshold, but the new threshold has been redefined because digital has sort of provided a level playing field, right? So one example is in China when we had the World TB Day. We were able to partner with Tencent, and this is again, think out the box, right? You would think like, hey, most of the time, those were, but when everybody was virtual, you think of new options. And when we did that medical education session, guess the number of viewers we had? It was 20 million viewers.
Wow.
And 20 million viewers were only possible to what Andrew said, where you integrate and you sort of expand. When I say, that's why I want to bring back to the scaling part, right? Get creative how you scale. You work with an ecosystem, with a digital giant, with a digital titan. So maybe in China it's Tencent, maybe US is other digital giants, to scale, right? And then to your point, did the investment go up? Definitely. But I want to be honest, right? I don't think is in parallel, exactly to say, because I think it is back to my point that business transformation has to happen. So there's quite a lot of work we need to bring in terms of business awareness of what it means to really digital transformation. It's not giving the money to the IT group. That's the biggest, I would say, fallacy, because it doesn't work. And my team knows that, that's not the way, even in J&J, we say, hey, you have to be collaborators with us, right? Because the business has an equal stake, like I said, back to data, back to driving change management.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the budget has to business process change. I mean, when Giuseppe talk about the omni-channel, multi-channel, whatever channel we call that, the technology part, I hate to say, is the easier part, but to change the way the reps have to behave, how they are being incentivized, the business rules are the difficult ones, right? So
Yeah.
it's a great challenge. So when you say whether the budget, I think we have to ask whether the total cost of ownership, did it go up? And did the business also invest in their business transformation to drive the digital transformation?
Yeah, and in my case, Andreas, our budget actually was flat, and I'll tell you why. Because we had constantly invested on our technical currency. So whether that's infrastructure, whether that's our legacy applications, there was always, whether it's Joyce or myself, any other CIO, as much as we've always been asked by our business partners to help with this digital transformation and digital agility, we always have to have one eye of ours on foundational aspects. And I'll tell you one thing, and I'm pretty sure Joyce is doing the same thing on her end, is cybersecurity posture. So when you have 100,000 people now all connecting through WebEx and Zoom, so it's very important that we continue to maintain, our customers, abiding to all the data privacy laws, whether it's J&J or Abbott, we make sure we are adhering to the data privacy consent that our customers have given us. So we have a responsibility, we have an accountability to use that data very responsibly and also to protect it responsibly. So what we do is we make sure that, our cybersecurity posture is high. So if I would tell, so from my perspective, the technical currency foundation that we had put in place, the infrastructure we had put in place, the data privacy, cybersecurity posture that we had put in place, what it did was, to use your own terms, it accelerated our digital agility. But I would probably say from a total cost of ownership perspective or the investment needed, we didn't see a significant need, rather just making sure we look at the metrics we had put in place to see if it indeed, the scalability and the performance we needed was happening over there. So bottom line is to even touch upon what Joyce was talking about, things like sample management. You cannot now walk into a hospital or a physician's office to drop a sample. So basically, what are your concepts around e-sample management? So how do you make sure, without even making a trip to the hospital, how literally using some very good software out there, how do you basically drop off the sample to the doctor actually in an accelerated manner so that they can now tell their patients about the products that are out there. I will tell you, we've all heard about the benefits of software as a service. All the vendors out there. Here's an opportunity as a result of us going with this pandemic, all that software as a service actually paid off. So you don't have to worry about actually doing things in your own data center and in your on-premise software. Rather, you now have to work, on software as a service, where it's all sitting in different data centers, where high availability and pretty much disaster recovery is enabled. So I think to all the CIOs out there, including myself, the investment we made definitely paid off as to where we are today. Do we still have work to do? Absolutely. I think it's an ongoing journey. It's never a destination. But having said that, I do want to make sure not in all cases the budgets went high. It actually justified the investments we made in the last couple of years for a situation such as this.
Yeah, and Vishu, I hear you, and I have a little bit a different perspective, which is in our case in Eli Lilly and Company, I see our response was in two folds. One is what I call respond, which was the COVID-19. So similar to what you're saying is how we are going now support our customer, our physician, if we need to work remotely, like sample management. We had in many countries in the world, people even challenged to do e-calls with their doctors, right? So we were able to capitalize in past investments, right? And now there was a huge adoption of those. So even our content, we had some markets where we didn't have even digitized content. So that was like the biggest acceleration was around to catch up on digital foundational basic components that we never had. Maybe we never accelerated because the old model was more a face-to-face model. And that model now is becoming probably most obsolete. So that was one. And then the second wave came along, and just to respond to your question, Andreas, around the transform, what I call the transform. This is where we had the various, let's say, geographic, let me tell you, POCs. We decided to scale some as a bet because we had already some proof that some models were working, and that is where we got, I would say, increment that budget to focus on the transformation. I would not tell you that we double up. I wish we could, but we had far much more investments. And but the tension would be how you change your model to react to the emergency, and the other one is how you pivot, because the emergency is creating a new ecosystem. How you pivot to harvest that, and this is where, you know, starting to understand what are the channels that now our customer prefer is going to be crucial. So the analysis of data and starting to invest and harvest more data sources than ever. Building capabilities, I agree with Joyce, is not about the technology. It's going to be mostly about people and processes. We need to have those three to have an enterprise capabilities and to succeed. And if you undermine or if pass to IT, you will have the emphasis of the technology, but there is no capability if we don't have the process and the people. This is where we need to do investment in our business team to tell them how to operate in this new ecosystem. And we have many marketeers that have been used to work in a face-to-face type of environment, digital agency, they've been used to do live events, and now we need to move to do any peer-to-peer across 20 countries where we want to invite 20,000 or 1,500 physicians, and we don't know how to do that. We don't have the infrastructure, but most importantly, we don't have the execution, the competencies. So that is where we need to invest on in the transformation, which is an investment on the people side, and transform as well our business processes. We can't only adapt our technologies to current processes. Actually, we need to maximize our technology to transform our processes first. And then what I would say is we need to anticipate what are going to be the behavioral changes. And I have a huge belief that this next 4 or 5 months, if we do our job well done, we will be able to anticipate. Who's going to do that? Is going to dramatically increase NPS scores with our customers.
Yeah, I think the key word is change. How do you affect the change? And Andreas, you had also mentioned, how do you sustain the behavioral change? That's going to be, once the vaccines comes out, and once, things hopefully get back to normal or the new normal, how do you sustain it? Any final thoughts? Because I'm getting a stream, and a lot of questions are streaming from the audience. I would like to give them the opportunity. Quick thoughts of how you want to sustain change before we go to the audience. Andreas,
should I start, or is it open for all? Because my initial thought, just to close out the previous discussion round, is indeed the transformation has to be driven by the business and by business processes. And here it is, and that leads to your question, Subrato. Here it is all about mindset. Are we willing to change how we think? Are we willing to discard the old way of doing business? As the head of the NHS in the UK said, innovation is not so much about new ideas, because the ideas are out there. It's about saying goodbye to old behaviors and old paradigms. And I think that's a challenge for all of us in the day-to-day work. How do we say farewell to what we used to do and adopt to this new world and to the new customer demands out there, and every day remind us what is the customer experience, what is the consumer experience in their everyday life, whether it's online banking, whether it's a remote doctor visit, whether it's shopping at Amazon. That's where the bar is. Anything that we deliver that is not as fluid, not as convenient, will be subpar. So I think this is where the sustained, how do you sustain it, comes in. on the everyday work, focus on the bar and don't go below it, don't fall back in old behaviors and old paradigms, because the world out there moves fast, and our thinking and our approach, and maybe also our willingness to take a certain degree of risk has to keep pace with the changes out there.
Yeah, so the personalized experience, how do you deliver it as well?
Yes.
Others, Giuseppe, Joyce, anybody else would like to comment? Any quick comments on how do you sustain change?
I mean, I just echo what Andreas was saying. Sorry for the noise background here. Is to me, it's gonna be, yes, it's gonna be about sustain it, but to me, I see the opportunity to shape it as well, right? So you don't want to go below the bar, because all our consumer experiences are shaping as well our professional experiences. There is an opportunity in this period to start to test new models and maybe build and shape new opportunities and new behaviors, and continuously sustain those. And to me, sustain would be as well about excellence in execution and making sure that we do it well. So we need to have the right mindset. We need to have the right execution. But the other one, we need to have a very open mindset to try new things, because these new things can maybe be in the next springboard to create a new paradigm. So I think it's about sustaining, but it's about as well shaping.
Yep. Yeah, very good. And what came to my mind when, Andreas and Giuseppe, I think we have to measure, recalibrate, measure and recalibrate. So I think we have to, continue to iterate that, because we have experience, especially with the COVID, what acceleration looks like, right? All of us said, for example, same thing, right? Whatever we plan for 12 months happened in 12 days. We have the same example in J&J where, we went direct to the physician campaign during the COVID, just what Vishnu said, all in 2 weeks, right? People thought not possible, became possible because of SaaS, because of managed service. Having said that, I think we need to go back to the customer experience. So if you go back to the HCP, and when the patients and the doctors have experienced what it's like, they're going to demand for it, right? So they're going to not like go back and say, okay, just do it what you have. They will expect a new standard from us, right? So we have to recalibrate and say, hey, not only the quantity, but the total quality, right? So we have to do both. I think the challenge right now is the consistency, because, we went, through the period. So, whatever that call with vaccine, are we consistent? Do we measure? We recalibrate? Because I think after the experience, I don't think people go backwards. I think our customers, our patients will demand more. And if you don't serve, they will go to the business. The customers will go to the place that serves them what they want.
Yeah, and I think to just finish the thought, Subrita, I think all of the panelists said that we've got to listen to the customer, put the customer in the middle of everything you're doing, and I think make appropriate course correction depending upon what the consumer needs are. We are here to take care of the customer, the consumer, but also define who's your customer. In this case, as Joyce pointed out, it could be a physician, it could be a pharmacy, it could be a consumer itself, a patient out there. So it's very important that we are building an ecosystem that's catering to what they want and not what we want. So in regards to that, as Andreas pointed out, there are some legacy thought process and ideas we thought is going to continue to work even in a pandemic situation. Just be open to kind of adjusting that, because not everything you did in the past is going to work right now. And so the digital agility we are putting together, again, we've got to constantly measure it, as Joyce was mentioning, because those metrics and measurements will let you know whether you're trending in the right direction. But the key is the customer is your North Star.
Brilliant thoughts, starting from participatory medicine to push-pull models to empowering the patients. Let's go to a few audience questions, and related to this change, as we affect the change, one of the questions, and I'm just going to take part of it, there's a level of exhaustion with auto emailers and digital chatbots as well. So there's a fatigue, digital fatigue, you might want to term it as. How do we tackle that? Is there a level of responsibility that we have to exercise, I'm sure, impacting our customers?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think that is one should be one of the obsessions, considering that we should put the customer experience at the center, right? Like Vishu was talking about. This is where there are capabilities we need to start to develop. You know, we talk about this multi-channel now becomes omni-channel orchestration. We need to learn that it's going to be. Joyce, I think you were saying it's not any longer about quantity, but it's going to be about quality. I always worry about what I call channel saturations. Think about if you have a portfolio of solution, for example, in diabetes, and you are hitting with the same number of brands, the same targets across multiple channels, that is not sustainable. So there are various elements you need to understand. First of all, of course, what are the most credible channels to make sure that you're going to spend your efforts where you have the highest impact. But the other one, we need to start to use technologies, machine learning, next best actions type of next best engagement type of technologies to not any longer go in a let's say in a very sales driven, but start to anticipate and orchestrate based on anticipating needs, but especially in controlling that we are not saturating too much. So that's why I always said that the pull-push or push-pull models are something that we need to start to learn around. Are there any ecosystem we can jump on or we can facilitate or partner with? But definitely quantity versus quality matters, where matters. And I think if we can start to learn around, because of this data we will have, and the more we personalize, the more data we'll need behind the scenes, the more we'll be able to be anticipatory. There's going to be a great opportunity to really move from positive experience to outstanding positive experiences.
And to the audience, you may please send your questions on chat, and we'll be happy to take more. One of the questions is, can you break down how a company should start? What sub-teams would you create to get the focus started in terms of the digital transformation?
Yep. Maybe I take a shot at that, and then my distinguished panel can help. For me, I always start with the strategy. I think that always helps. And I always start with the business strategy first. So before you just jumped in and do the digital transformation, really take the time to understand the business strategy, and then make sure you develop the technology strategy or the components of the digital transformation to line up with the business strategy, because I think that would really help you flush out initially what is the focus of your organization. But having said that, all of us have said we started with the external environment, right? Have a very keen sense of what's happening in outside and the trends and changes. And I think we didn't talk a little bit about the innovation side, right? And I think gone are the days, you don't go to a business today and tell them like, just tell me what you want, right? I don't think, I remember when I first started as a CIO, it almost like you go get requirements, you do it, 12 months later, we develop something. Nowadays, I think they'll come in and say, you tell me what's happening. And I like when Andrea started with the external environment, right? What are the trends? Where is telehealth? Where is omnichannel? So I encourage you to do things, understand the business and equip yourself to understand the trend, and then put the two together and take some risks and propose ideas. It could be, you go there and they said totally wrong, but I think they'll give you credit for taking that step.
So along the same line, there is a specific question to Vishu, which says, as customer realities change, does technology capability define the customer journey or experience today, or is it vice versa? So is customer journey first or experience first? How would you change the skewed mindset?
No, I think it's a great question. For us, the way we've approached it is pretty much putting the customer journey front, because there's technology out there is so many. It's easy for us to adapt. And for a big company like Abbott or even Johnson & Johnson, we always have a variety of tools that we want to use. But definitely we are putting the customer journey in front of how we are trying to do it. Now, I will also address two parts of the earlier question. One is completely agree with Joy's perspective on how digital transformation should be addressed. But I do want to make sure that everybody understands, you don't have to boil the ocean. Take a part of the digital strategy you want to implement it, because then it's easier for you to justify the investment you're doing and also showcase, the success that comes out of it. Sometimes digital transformation fails because we just work on the strategy alone for years. And then by the time you implement it, that strategy is already gone or that transformation is already outdated. So point number one. And then on the part about, because the customer journey and those marketing email fatigue comes come in tandem, I just want to address it. I think, that was very good response. But one of the things, what we are doing is, this is not about, as rightfully called out, it's not about quantity, but more about quality, right? So what does that mean? When you're talking about millions of patients and whatnot, it's not about going back to business leadership and telling them, oh, out of the 2 million patients, 500,000 opened the email and 200,000 responded. That's not how we measure today. I think the measurement is more about, was the customer delighted with the email we sent? So I'll take the diabetes journey itself as an example. So what we do is, yes, we definitely ask the customer, first of all, are you interested in receiving an email from us? But then we also get into the situation of, are you interested in educational emails? Are you interested in marketing emails? Are you interested in sharing the emails with the partners? And based on that, the systems and capabilities or even the processes put in place can kind of tailor to it. But on the educational emails, which is where, look, if I am diabetic, I do want companies such as, Abbott to let me know, what could I do differently with my carb intake? What could I do differently with my exercises? So people are interested in those emails. So in those situations, we are not seeing the fatigue. I think the fatigue happens when you start bombarding them in this omni-channel concept, where people think like, I'm going to target them through social media, through email, through call center, through fax. I think that's when a customer gets fatigued, basically realizing, is this company going to impact me in all these channels? Instead, identify what the channel is going to be and make sure that the email you're sending to them is relevant to them. So the key concept of, again, this is all not rocket science. Everybody knows this. Personalization of the email. What delights that customer to actually do that? So hopefully, you're getting the point as far as how companies such as Abbott are looking at these omni-channel strategies and digital transformation. It's all about the customer. So definitely customer journey comes first, and pertaining to that customer journey, when what the customer preferences are, we adjust the technology appropriately. That's why it was absolutely right when one of the panelists called out, it's always about people, process, and technology, along with the data and information.
Yeah. So talking of data information, and Dr. Koster, the question from the audience is to your first point of insights-driven approach. And with the real world data and real world health outcomes which comes along, can the pharma industry be aggressive in mining, analyzing customer data to create highly personalized engagement strategy that you were mentioning, as other industries like retail, banking, media?
I think the answer would be yes, a yes in bold letters. And I think we talking about the large companies that are represented at the table, they can learn a lot from the small companies and from the startups out there. There are startups out there that have, like as Vishu, you pointed out, the focus is on quality and quality of the information, and taking the information that comes from the customer and mining is maybe not the best word for it, but utilizing what comes from the customer out there, and then using a smart approach, using a smart system to provide, maybe with an automated or half automated reply, the customer is happy with. There are small companies that then have done surveys. And even with an automated reply, if it's done in a smart way, they say they feel respected as an individual. They they love to engage with the system. So it's possible if you listen carefully and if you fine-tune your approach from boilerplate, but think about the individuum on the other side of the line, harvest, if you will, enough data and preferences and individual disease points from this individual, and then rather than using a one-fits-all approach, using a very, very targeted approach, not unlike what we try to do in medicine when we talk about precision medicine. I don't want to coin a new term here, precision consumer engagement, but it's going away from boilerplate towards looking at individual characteristics and fine-tuning the guidance we give accordingly.
Yep. Hey, can I just add a little bit? I think it's so relevant, this question. Yeah, and you know the farm industry, we that we have to really continue to address reputation. But one of the things that because somebody asked, right, what's the difference between the retail? I spent a little bit time in the retail industry. I think for healthcare, I think there's a need for trust, and the need to to be have it compliant, right? Because this is health information. And we have to create a way where the data is used in a trusted and compliant way, and the privacy somebody mentioned also comes into play, right? So that's why, and I'm not giving it as an excuse, why generally the healthcare industry or the life sciences is considered behind, because it's a very regulated environment, right? And we but I really like that, we are very careful with the data, but we have to be clear that carefulness doesn't mean slow, doesn't mean that we are behind. So we have to do it in a trusted, secure way, but we still have to be aware of the speed and the velocity of change. I think that's the challenge we have, if I would say the elephant in the room, right? We know we have to speed up, but we also understand the compliance, the regulation, and the very complex healthcare environment we operate under. But that is not an excuse. So I think we have to find solutions there. But I think we really need to address, making sure that we handle the data in a trusted, secure, and compliant way.
Giuseppe, 30 seconds for you, Giuseppe.
Yeah, I was thinking to both Andreas and Joyce. I think there are a couple of things. One is we need to put the customer at the center. You can ask preferences, but in my personal experience, preference says something, then behavior says something else. So I think one of the capabilities we need to start to think about carefully, and now technology gives us a plethora of opportunities with advanced analytics, is rather than bothering and saturating the channel and bothering the customer with the multiple questions, is there a way that we can avoid that and anticipate that, because we will be able somehow through our past interactions start to develop those behavioral. Because sometimes behavioral response versus preference, they don't match quite a bit.
Yeah.
That is one. And the other one, I think we need to start to think about managing our data not any longer in a functional way. You might have a real-world evidence organization, medical affairs organization. You might have a commercial advanced analytics organization. Within the regulation privacy, there is a huge opportunity when you flip the framework from vertical to horizontal. There is an opportunity there to unlock a lot of insights. And to respond to Andreas, there are a lot of medical needs. I believe and we believe we can unlock when we are going to do that accordingly. So is as well as a company organization, we need to come out. Yes, the customer is the center, but I always say the first enemy is us. We need to come out from our functional silos and truly disrupt that first internally, blend that, and then learn to build horizontal capabilities and stop just to focus on vertical capabilities. So as an IT professional now, I always say I'm a business leader with an IT accountability. I don't want to be called a technical leader, because this is not the way to do our job.
Right. So such a fascinating session. Truly appreciate the gamut of scope that we covered. And truly looking forward to live the next 50 years of business disruptive change, which is going to impact each of our lives. Lots of audience questions. Unfortunately, we're not able to cover. Maybe we'll send it to you offline. Please, from all of us at Indegene, thank you so much, Joyce, for joining from Singapore at late evening on a Friday. Andreas and Vishu joining us from California, waking way early in the morning. And Giuseppe, despite all your challenges which you had in the last 24 hours, making it today, we're truly grateful to you. Thank you very much. Join us at the Networking Lounge. There's a big raffle prizes on. And also please join us at the Experience Zone. I think there's some fascinating networking opportunities. Thank you once again. Truly appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you to Indegene.
Thank you. Thank you for all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great panel. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.